Rashee Rice is the number one player you need to trade for this offseason. We'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check him out over on SI, where he has his fantasy ranks up, his dynasty ranks. He does fantastic work over there, so check it out. On today's show, we're taking a look at 5 players that we are trading for in every single dynasty league this offseason. And Fabs, let's start at the wide receiver position because you and I have the same trade target. Who are we going out and getting?
Rashee Rice. And hopefully this doesn't scare everyone that we're both in on Rashee Rice so much, right? I can't look past what he's done at the end of his first season and then before he got hurt last season. When you look at the numbers before that knee injury from last year, he was averaging over 7 targets a game. He was averaging over 16 points per game. Had he kept up that pace for a full season, he's like right there with Malik Nabers in terms of fantasy production. And of course, Nabers was a top 10 wide receiver. And I have seen film of him at mini camps, and he looks good. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any health issues with Rashee Rice coming off that knee injury. And I also still feel like even though Xavier Worthy was very good, especially down the stretch and into the postseason, that Rashee Rice is the alpha wide receiver in Kansas City. And when you also factor in, Marcus, that Travis Kelce is 36, how many more years is Travis Kelce got in him? I don't know. Maybe one more. I mean, listen, if Taylor Swift were my girlfriend, I'd probably want to spend as much time with her as I possibly could, which means maybe retiring after 2025. I don't know. That's just me. So if Kelce is gone, and he will be at some point during Rice's career with the Kansas City Chiefs, that's going to open up more targets. And the Chiefs are very unlikely to get another tight end who's going to draw that many opportunities in the passing game because Travis Kelce is a Hall of Fame type of tight end. Rashee Rice could see a ton of targets. In fact, this year, if he averages somewhere in the 8 to 10 target range, could be the low point for him over the next several years, because I don't expect Kelce to play for very much longer. But I do expect Patrick Mahomes to be there for a long time. He signed a really long-term contract for a lot of cash. So this Mahomes to Rashee Rice combination could end up being one of the most fruitful in fantasy football over the next 5 years. So that's why I want to get Rashee Rice right now before the numbers start going crazy and the price starts going way too high.
First of all, I didn't know that you were a Swiftie. Congratulations.
I'm not a Swiftie.
Okay.
I know one song. I think it's the Anti-Hero. You know, she's just a very attractive young lady. That's all. That's what I was talking about.
Fine, whatever. All right, let's look back at 2023 because I think people forgot how good Rashee Rice was in 2023. If you include the postseason, because remember, he didn't play much in the first half of the season, but include the postseason, 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 8.1 yards after catch per reception. And that's the stat that I really want to focus on because that's where he's different than a lot of these other slot receivers. He gets open against zone coverage so well, but he's also so dynamic after the catch. He was incredibly efficient. The ADOT is low. Like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are not giving him a lot of downfield targets. They're keeping him near the line of scrimmage. And the way that I look at this offense going forward, Fabs, is I feel like Rashee Rice could be the eventual Travis Kelce replacement. I know they're playing together, and I know, he had a big season with Kelce, but it feels like once Kelce's out of the picture or he's phased out of the offense, it's going to be Rice that gets those 3rd and 5 targets where that's the first read for Patrick Mahomes. And he's just the guy that he's looking for whenever he gets into trouble. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up taking the red zone, end zone targets as well, and we start to see the touchdowns go up. This is just, to me, a perfect fit between player, quarterback, and coach. And I want in. And I know the price has gotten more expensive. Wide receiver 16 right now. In startup drafts, he's picked 24. I will gladly pay that price to have Rashee Rice on my team.
There is no negatives. There are no negatives at all with Rashee Rice. We've seen what he can do. He's young. He's got a rapport with one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the league in Patrick Mahomes. And yes, he's got to be there already, folks. And a whole ton of targets are very likely to become created and open once Kelsey retires. And again, Kelsey's one of the greats of all time, maybe the most prolific statistical tight end in the history of the National Football League. Everything lines up for Rashee Rice to be a stud in fantasy for a long, long time. That's why I want to get him now. I want to get him now before the price goes up.
So, and a couple other things. We should mention Xavier Worthy, who you did talk about. I am a huge Xavier Worthy fan, and I'm fine paying the price right now. Wide receiver 19, I get it. I just think Worthy and Rice are such different players, and they complement each other well. Like, Worthy is going to be the guy getting touches behind the line of scrimmage, the screens, all that kind of stuff. But he's also going to be getting the big targets down the field. But it's going to be Rice that gets the consistent 7 to 8, 9 targets every single game. And he's the guy that you can rely on every single week in PPR leagues. While Worthy's a little bit more of a spike player, that's okay. I don't mind it. The other thing is, Fabs, I get the feeling that after Josh Allen won MVP last year, Lamar Jackson won it in 2023, the Chiefs being blown out in the Super Bowl, that this is going to be a little bit of a Patrick Mahomes revenge season. Like, he's going to try to remind everybody that he's the best quarterback in the league and that Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are still a step behind him. I know the fantasy numbers and the overall stats have not been great. I just get the sense that we're in for a big Patrick Mahomes season.
I wish I could agree with you there. I just have seen what he's done the last couple of years, and I'm a little bit concerned about whether or not he can ever get back into the top 5 at the position.
But don't you think if he has a healthy Rice and a healthy Worthy,
this is the best cast of characters he's had in terms of his pass catchers. There's no question about that. The combined group of Kelsey, even though he's past his prime, I mean, Kelsey still caught 90 plus balls last year.
He could be a nice complementary option.
Right.
He can't be the focal point of the offense anymore.
Rice hasn't entered the prime of his career yet, so he's still, I mean, like, yes, they have got weapons. They have got weapons. Ultimately, I still have Mahomes ranked outside of my top 5 at quarterback, but I do understand the folks out there like you that think that he could bounce back this upcoming season statistically.
I'm not even saying from a fantasy I'm just saying, could we see a season where Mahomes is at like 34 touchdowns this year, passing touchdowns, and 4,400 passing yards? Because I think if he does that, he can support both of these guys being elite fantasy options.
Yeah, I don't know about elite for Xavier Worthy, but I certainly think Rashee Rice can be there. Yeah, obviously every season's different. Injuries occur, and you never know what can happen. But the potential for big stats certainly for Rice to me makes him very valuable in a potential dynasty trade.
Last thing before we move on, a couple of reasons, at least for this year, not just for dynasty, but for this year. I don't think the defense is going to be quite as good as it was last year. They've lost some key pieces. They're getting a little bit older on that side of the ball. I also don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well. They brought back Kareem Hunt. Isaiah Pacheco is in the final year of his deal. I just don't think he's super special. And the schedule is incredibly hard. The AFC West might be the best division of football. I think the Raiders are going to be much better than they were last year. I think the Chiefs are going to have to try to put up more points. They were able to win games last year 20-17, 21-14. I just don't know if that's going to be the case this year. Maybe that means Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have to throw the ball more, which would be great news for Rashee Rice.
That Chiefs backfield is one of the bigger conundrums and question marks from a fantasy perspective. And there are several backfields around the league that are going to obviously give us headaches all season long. But that's one of them where I don't know that I can point my finger at one guy who I think will be the true featured back. When you bring back Kareem Hunt, who was better than Pacheco in the second half of last year. And maybe that's because Pacheco came off the injury. I don't know. But when you also bring in Elijah Mitchell, who I get it, not a durable guy, but when he played for the 49ers, he had some really good games and some very eye-opening stats. That backfield is going to be very, very difficult from a fantasy perspective to predict. But again, as a whole, this could be, at least on paper, the Chiefs' most talented offense since Tyreek Hill was there.
All right, let's talk about a couple of running backs that we are trading for in every single Dynasty league. We'll talk about Trey Benson and Jaylen Warren next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever wished managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or you're planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. My family has been using Monarch Money for about 7 months now, and it's unbelievable how much money we were wasting on stupid stuff. But now Monarch Money has helped us come up with a budget. We're sticking with it, and now we are actually building some wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are discussing 5 players that we are buying in every single Dynasty league. And Fabs, let's talk about some running backs. Trey Benson, who had a rough rookie season after being the second running back drafted. The entire running back class in 2024 had rough seasons. I saw a stat the other day. The top 5 running backs drafted in the 2024 class total 530 yards rushing. Like it was, that bad. But why are you in on Trey Benson?
I just think because the end of line is coming for James Conner. Benson was a 3rd-round pick in 2024. And listen, Conner has been durable more recently, with between Pittsburgh and then during part of his time in Arizona, a little bit dinged up. But you wonder that, if this is a guy who now is entering that age 30 campaign, are the stats going to start to fall a little bit? And could they get Benson?
I saw him at my local mall the other day, just walking around, just shopping at JCPenney. It looks massive.
Wait a minute. James Conner shops at JCPenney?
Apparently, yeah, in Boscov's.
I didn't even know JCPenney's were like around anymore.
Yeah, they're still around. Yeah.
Okay, well, interesting. That's an interesting note. So maybe he's just very frugal with his dough.
Yeah, it's a running back. You probably have to be. The shelf life is pretty short.
That's true. So listen, I mean, he's been very good throughout his career. He's had durability issues from time to time, but we all know that once you get to like 29, 30 at running back, especially when you've had a lot of work, the body tends to break down a little bit. Even some of the greats, it's happened. I mean, Eric Dickerson, for example. And so maybe they use Benson a little bit more this season. And if Conner should get hurt, then Benson is going to be thrust into a bigger role. And the Cardinals can get out of Conner's contract after this upcoming season, 2025. So, I mean, there is a world where Trey Benson is going to be their starting running back as soon as 2026. And he was very highly touted coming out of Florida State. Obviously, just hasn't had the opportunities to come out and make a fantasy impact because Conner's been very good. Also, keep in mind that when Conner's been healthy, they've utilized him as a featured back. And so you would think that the same scenario would be true if and when Benson gets that job. And I don't think Marcus Benson's going to cost a whole heck of a lot either. So, because he really hasn't done much from a statistical perspective.
No.
But if you look at Conner, the age, the contract situation, and where they drafted Benson, I really think that at some point here in the very near future, he's going to get more work and potentially be that top back in Arizona.
I agree. Like, this is the perfect type of running back to target in your dynasty drafts, right? Because just a year ago, we're super high on him. He goes to Arizona in early part of round 3, has a not so great rookie season, but he's a 22-year-old running back. 22. That's an elite athlete. If you're watching with us on YouTube right now, you can see the numbers. He 6 foot, 216 pounds. He ran a 4.39 at the NFL Combine. Like, he's got elite athleticism, and he was super productive when he was at Florida State. You look at all the advanced numbers courtesy of Pro Football Focus: 96th percentile rushing grade, 100th percentile missed tackles forced per attempt, 91st percentile yards after contact per attempt. Like, he was a very, very good running back prospect. He just had a down rookie season. I think you could see it. He was overthinking a little bit. I think maybe the speed of the game was a little bit too quick. But you mentioned the price, RB 36 right now, Fabs, 112 in startup drafts. If you look at some recent trades, like, it's unbelievable. Like, I'll give you a couple. Trey Benson and pick 201 for Alexander Madison, whatever, and pick 108. So you're basically moving down 4 spots and picking up Trey Benson. I think I would do that.
That's a win.
Okay. Another one, Trey Benson and pick 112 for Jalen Polk, whatever, and pick 108. Again, you're sliding back 4 spots, picking up Trey Benson.
Why is anyone trading for Jalen Polk right now? I mean, jeez Louise. Wow. Yeah.
I also just think this Cardinals offense is going to be pretty good this year. And you mentioned the history of these running backs. Like, they just have a hard time staying healthy. It wasn't like Connor was a great athlete coming out of Pittsburgh. He ran in the high 4.6s. He's had some injuries. I just wouldn't be surprised if we get to like week 3 of the season and it's, are we shocked that the 4.39 athlete from Florida State's the more explosive player? No, not at all.
Yeah, I'm right there. Everything lines up. The youth, an older starter who could potentially not be on the squad after this season, explosive offense, and at least for this upcoming season, the Cardinals have a very favorable schedule too.
Don't you think this Cardinals offense, and you mentioned it, could just be a lot better this year? Like, if Marvin Harrison takes a step that at least everybody seems like they're anticipating him doing. I mean, we're seeing him get drafted early in startup drafts. He's a top 10 pick in startup drafts, or top 10 or 1 wide receivers. If this offense takes off and Marvin Harrison is that true X, and McBride's this dominant tight end in the slot, and Kyler gives you this rushing ability, maybe we just see more opportunities for this offense to put up points. And that's how Trey Benson, even if he's splitting carries, becomes a valuable fantasy asset.
Well, think about what this offense could look like even in 2026. You could have Kyler under center, Benson in the backfield, Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously Trey McBride. And then, what if the Cardinals go out? They didn't really focus on offense in the offseason. I mean, what if they go out and get a really good number 2 wide receiver in the draft or through the free agent market? That offense could be extremely explosive, and they play in a division where they're going to have to score a lot of points.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to give you another running back that I'm targeting in a lot of these leagues, and it's Jaylen Warren. And I know he's on a 1-year contract with the Steelers, but I do think at the running back position, we kind of have to view it as a year-by-year position because there's so much turnover at that spot. But somebody who's being drafted right behind Trey Benson, actually, pick 115, RB 37. I just have a hard time, Fabs, thinking that a 3rd-round pick in Caleb Johnson, who was drafted at the end of round 3, who doesn't have a lot of experience as a pass blocker, almost no experience as a receiver, is going to be on the field a lot with Aaron Rodgers. Like, I have my doubts. And I think as Rodgers continues to get older and the mobility gets worse, we're going to see him start to dump the ball off to the running back more and more. We already know that Jaylen Warren can be an effective runner, an efficient runner. He's the best receiving running back on this roster. He's the best pass blocking running back on this roster. Why couldn't he just get a bunch of touches? And in PPR leagues, why couldn't he be an RB2 this year?
So here's the thing. I like Caleb Johnson. I just don't know that Jaylen Warren will be someone who I can guarantee you a big role long term. As you mentioned with the contract situation, I would not be surprised if he were the better fantasy back over Caleb Johnson this season. I was 100%. But if you're looking long term, I mean, clearly, for me at least, I'd rather have Caleb Johnson, who, again, not as great of a pass catcher, but you could maybe see him filling that Najee Harris role in terms of being the early down back, the guy who gets the goal line opportunities. And Aaron Rodgers is on a 1-year deal, and then he's going to retire for all intents and purposes. So that's where, like, I get Warren, and I understand it. Like, I almost look at, like, remember last year in Cincinnati, where is it going to be Chase Brown or is it going to be Zach Moss?
Yeah,
and Zach Moss definitely had more experience, and he had also popped the year before. So you're like, oh, well, maybe Zach Moss is going to be something here. We'll find. And then obviously, he ended up getting hurt, and Chase Brown grabbed that job and ran with it, literally and figuratively. Could that be something that happens in Pittsburgh this season? Yeah, absolutely. I just don't know about the long term, because I don't know what the Steelers are going to look like long term. I don't know who the hell the quarterback's going to be in 2026. So I love all the points you made. He's a good runner. He's a good pass catcher. He can pass protect. We do not want, and the Steelers do not want, a running back in the backfield with Aaron Rodgers who cannot pass protect, because Rodgers will rip him a new one if he gets nailed, because Caleb Johnson missed an assignment. So I totally get that. I just don't know about the long-term ramifications of what's going to happen in Pittsburgh.
I agree. And I'm not factoring that in at all when I'm trading for him. The reason I would go out and trade for Jaylen Warren is, let's say you have a weaker RB2 situation. Maybe you have an anchor running back. Maybe you've got Saquon. I just think Jaylen Warren is going to be an RB2 this year. And it's not going to be sexy. It's probably not going to be, you're not going to love starting him every week, but he's going to get a lot of touches and a lot of targets. And you start him as an RB2 this year, and then we'll see. It's not all that different from like Chuba Hubbard last year, who was penciled in as a starter in Carolina. They drafted Jonathan Brooks, and it felt like Hubbard was just a placeholder until Brooks was ready. And then he had such a good season that the Panthers signed him even before Brooks tore his ACL again. Again, I'm not predicting that exact scenario for Warren. I just think he's going to be way better than what his current ADP suggests.
I don't disagree with you. I think long-term, obviously, you want Caleb Johnson, but he is not well-rounded enough as a running back coming into the season as a rookie to be a guy who's going to see 300 plus touches in a season. It's going to be a committee. And while I do have Johnson ranked ahead of Warren in my rankings in terms of Dynasty, could Warren outplay him in this upcoming season? I think it's certainly a possibility.
And by the way, I have Caleb Johnson significantly ahead of Warren in terms of Dynasty ADP. Sure. I just think where we're at right now in terms of how cheap Warren is, I think he's a good buy in Dynasty leagues. All right, let's talk about a couple quarterbacks that we are excited to buy. You guys probably already know who I'm picking here, but who is Fabs buying at the quarterback's position? We'll tell you next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Fabs, let's finish up with the quarterback position. Which quarterback are you targeting in every Dynasty league?
Were you a Seinfeld fan?
Yes, still.
All right. So then you know the term, we love the Drake.
Yes.
I love Drake Maye, man. I love them coming out of North Carolina. I love what I saw from him last year. I know, like, he didn't put up these massive stats, but he did have some games where you're like, that's interesting. And what do I love about a quarterback more than anything else is a guy who can run with the football. And if you look at the games that Drake Maye started and played the majority of this offensive snaps for the Patriots last year, and you look at those rushing yards and you project them over 17 games, this kid's going to rush for 650, 700 yards. And when a quarterback gets to that level, it almost doesn't matter what he does as a passer, because it's not going to be so terrible that it's going to drop him out of the top 10 or 12 at the quarterback position. And when you look at what the Patriots are doing, right? I mean, obviously, they're trying to bolster the offensive line. They did that in the draft. They also added Stephon Diggs. They've got some talent there. They brought in Travion Henderson from Ohio State. See if he could potentially be their featured back at some point. Maybe not this year, but at some point in the future. They still have Ramondre Stevenson, and they're going to continue to bring in good young talent in that offense. Now, is he going to be Tom Brady? No, of course not. But can he be a top 10 to 12 fantasy quarterback for years to come? Yes. He is a good passer, and he also, once again, can run with the football. And for me, that is huge. So that's why I want to get Drake Maye now before he goes out in 2025 and rushes for 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. And you're thinking, damn, why didn't I listen to that Fabiano back in June and July when Maye's value wasn't as high? Because it is going to rise, folks. I can guarantee you.
So I love Drake Maye, the prospect, the player, but I've got like all these thoughts in my head that I just need to get out, and you tell me where I'm right and where I'm wrong. So I think you're right. I think he's going to run a lot because I think he's going to have to because of the offensive line. I also think Josh McDaniels, while he's not a great head coach, obviously, he's like a real, actual NFL offensive coordinator that can add value compared to whatever New England was throwing out there, not only last year, but the last couple of years remember when Matt Patricia and Joe Judge were running the offense in New England?
Yeah, I'd like to forget that, just like Patriots fans would like to forget that. Yeah.
I think one of my only big concerns is that I think this New England defense is going to be awesome. I think, especially with Mike Vrabel running it, like I think they're going to be incredible. And could that lead to New England turtling a little bit more and playing ball control and not letting Drake Maye throw the ball some? Maybe, but then I think back to like Ryan Tannehill in 2019 and 2020. Remember that 2020 season where he had 40 touchdowns? I'm not making that up. 40 total touchdowns.
It was great. He was awesome in fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Drake Maye could be better than Ryan Tannehill, but that's not a bad player comp. Like somebody who is big, athletic, and throw down the middle of the field. So again, I have no doubts about Drake Maye, the player. It's only the situation, but in general, I think I am buying.
And also, consider this. If Drake Maye rushes for 650 yards and, 4 to 6 touchdowns, he doesn't need to throw for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. He can throw for 3,200 yards and give you 18 touchdown passes somewhere in that ballpark, and it's still going to make him a top 10 to 12 fantasy quarterback. We've seen that. Justin Fields.
Sure.
Justin Fields is not some elite passer in the National Football League, but this guy's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. Why? Because he gave you a ton on the ground. Now, maybe that's a little bit of a different scenario because Fields, rushed for over 1,000 yards in a single season. And I don't think Drake Maye is going to get to that point, but still 650 to 700 rushing yards, 4 to 6 rushing touchdowns. And I get 3,200 passing yards and 18 touchdown passes. And I'm, probably, he's a good quarterback, 8 to 10 interceptions, something like that. Those are good numbers from a fantasy perspective. And he's obviously still very young.
Right now, Drake Maye, QB8, just one spot overall ahead of Caleb Williams, 92 overall for Drake Maye, 93 for Caleb Williams. So are you taking Maye over Caleb?
No, I still have Caleb ranked ahead of him, but it's close. Caleb, the talent is ridiculous. The Bears, there's no excuses now for Caleb. None. Okay. No, Shane Waldron last year. All right, you can throw that. That's an excuse. The coaching was not good. Now you got Ben Johnson. You got the dude who everybody wanted, who needed a head coach. And the Cowboys ended up with Brian Schottenheimer. That's a different story. Anyways, I'm never going to get over that. Anyways, there is no excuse for Caleb this year. Zero, none, zilch. They drafted Luther Burden. Roma Dunze is another guy that I would trade for right now in Dynasty. So I still like Caleb's situation more. But again, I also think Caleb's going to be more expensive if you try to trade for him than Drake Maye.
Probably. They're probably going to be pretty close. Did you hear the Ben Johnson quote about the quarterback sneaking on 3rd and 4th down? He said he doesn't like it because it doesn't result into an explosive play, which I thought is hilarious because that describes Ben Johnson to a T. Like Ben
Johnson is like the epitome of what fantasy managers want their head coach and offensive coordinator to be.
Really quickly before we head out, I just want to mention the guy that I'm trading for. Surprise, surprise. Michael Penix, QB 21.
No way.
Yeah, shocker. I know.
I never saw that coming.
Well, I look at someone like a couple of these names, like Dak Prescott, QB 18. I love Dak, but for fantasy, it's not close. I'd rather have Penix, who's significantly younger. Cam Ward is fine. I'd rather have Cam Ward, but JJ McCarthy, Justin Fields. I just think Penix is in a really good situation. Good offensive line, good weapons. He's got a run game that he can rely on. And more importantly, he's got a defense that's awful, like absolutely awful. And that's going to result into a lot of shootouts. They play in a dome. And the more that I'm thinking about, like, Jalen Polk was a 2nd-round pick who was awful. He might not even make New England's roster going into year 2. Roma Dunze had kind of a disappointing rookie season, despite being with the 9th overall pick. Jalen McMillan ended up having a decent season for Tampa. Maybe it was Michael Penix that made all of those receivers look better than they actually were at Washington. And we saw Penix look pretty good in this limited time last year. I just want Michael Penix on my team, and I'm willing to pay the QB 21 price tag because I just won't be surprised if he's putting up similar numbers to like what Baker Mayfield did in that crappy NFC South.
First off, I will not have you talk poorly about Rome Odunze.
I love Rome, by the way. One of my favorite players in last year's
draft. He didn't get enough targets last year, but now he will. Not every wide receiver is Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and busts out during his rookie campaign. Just look at Jackson Smith and Jigba and what he did in year 2. I think Rome Odunze is going to be very good in year 2. Listen, I mean, when you look at Michael Penix and the situation that he's in, I guess there's only 2 red flags for me: is age and injury. He's had knee issues, dating back to his time in college.
Yeah.
But there is nothing. The offense, the talent around him, there's no red flags for me from a personnel perspective. And he's got the big arm. Washington's offense was phenomenal in his final year with the Huskies. And so, I mean, listen, man, he's got what it takes. And I want to personally apologize to the Atlanta Falcons franchise because when they drafted Michael Penix last year, I was like, what in the Sam hell are they doing? They just signed Kirk Cousins to a $140 million deal or whatever the hell it was, and I thought they were a playoff contender. Well, I guess, hindsight's 2020. Things didn't work out in 2024, but, now they've got a young quarterback and the quarterback who's going to be under center for a long, long time there in Atlanta. And I can't disagree with you. I mean, I think the upside's there.
Imagine how discouraged we'd be about this Atlanta offense if it was Kirk Cousins running it this year after what we saw last year. Now, I don't think anybody expects Atlanta to be like a playoff team. Or no, sorry, I don't think anybody expects Atlanta to be like a playoff contender, Super Bowl contender. But at least they have some hope now with Michael Penix, and I think they're going to throw the ball all over the yard. So I like Michael Penix as QB 21. I'm willing to pay that price tag all day long. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out tomorrow's show, and we'll tell you the players that we are trading away in every Dynasty league. Be sure to tune in for that. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms, and we'll see you right back here on Tuesday.